There is a moment in every life when a quiet voice inside begins to rise. At first, it sounds like a simple thought that comes and goes, a whisper shaped from fear or desire. But if you listen more closely, you notice something darker, something older, something that has been waiting inside you with the hunger of a sleeping animal. This is the moment when you begin to meet the presence that has shaped every choice you ever made. And that presence has a name: ego. People like to imagine ego as a flaw, a small weakness, a shadow that can be managed. But the truth is colder. Ego is not a crack in your soul. Ego is your God. Every day you kneel before it. Every decision you make is an offering. Every hesitation is a prayer. Every desire is a ritual. Ego demands loyalty. Ego demands obedience. Ego demands sacrifice. And you give it everything without even noticing. It begins early. You feel a spark of shame or pride, and ego reaches out like a hand around your throat. It whispers that you must protect yourself at any cost. You must win. You must impress. You must defend your image. You must avoid anything that exposes your weakness. You must run from silence. You must fear the mirror. And you obey because ego promises safety, even when the safety is poison. But ego is never satisfied. It watches how you respond to pain. It watches how you deal with loneliness. It watches how you react when someone looks at you with judgment. Ego sees your trembling and turns it into fuel. It loves the sting of embarrassment because it can feed on it for years. It loves anger because it can twist it into control. It loves desire because it can trap you inside a loop that never ends. The more you feel, the more ego grows. You think you are in control, but you are only the servant of a presence that lives inside your fear. Soon, the sacrifices become heavier. You give up honesty because ego needs to look strong. You give up connection because ego fears rejection. You give up dreams because ego is terrified of failure. You give up rest because ego demands constant proof that you are worthy. Piece by piece, you offer yourself until you no longer remember what you are without this inner God that devours you from within. And the most dangerous part is that ego never raises its voice. It speaks softly, patiently, like an old friend who gently guides you away from truth. Some people fight ego with anger. Some try to crush it. Some try to silence it. But ego does not break, and it does not bleed. Ego only grows stronger when you push against it, because ego feeds on resistance. It feeds on struggle. It feeds on your belief that you can defeat it by force. Ego wants you to fight, because the more you fight, the deeper you sink into its grip. There is nothing ego loves more than the illusion of victory. The moment you think you have conquered it is the moment it tightens its hold, and yet there is a secret hidden in all this darkness, a truth that ego fears more than anything. Ego cannot survive in the light of awareness. When you pause and witness its movements without judgment, you begin to see its shape. You see its claws. You see the lies it uses to shape your path. You see how it bends your emotions into chains. And in that moment, the power begins to shift. Awareness is the only fire ego cannot swallow. To see ego clearly is to take back the life you once surrendered. Before we move into the next part of this journey, take a moment to breathe. If you feel something stirring inside you as you listen to these words, know that it is normal. It is the first step. And if this message resonates even slightly, I invite you to support this space. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your presence helps the message reach others who may need it. Ego grows in the quiet corners of your mind, not in the loud moments when you break or shout. but in the slow, steady hours when you move through life without noticing the weight you carry inside. Ego studies you with patience. It learns your fears. It memorizes your insecurities. It listens to the stories you repeat about yourself. And with every story, ego becomes stronger, more confident, more certain that you will continue to serve it. There comes a time when ego no longer hides in the shadows. It begins to shape your voice. It begins to speak through your thoughts. You tell yourself that you must be right, that you must protect your image, that you must hold on to every wound because the wounds justify your anger. Ego wants you to see yourself as separate from others, alone, misunderstood, superior or inferior. It does not matter which. As long as you feel divided, ego wins. You start to notice that ego creates a version of you that is always on guard, always watching, always needing to appear strong even when you feel tired. It convinces you that vulnerability is a weakness, that softness is dangerous, that honesty will expose you. But you do not realize that ego is not protecting you from the world. Ego is protecting itself from being seen. Because if you ever see it clearly, you will feel how heavy its chains have become. Ego teaches you to crave attention, but the attention never satisfies you. You receive praise, and the feeling fades in moments. You receive criticism, and the pain stays for years. Ego collects every wound and arranges them like trophies. It whispers that you must avoid anything that can hurt you again, even if that means avoiding life itself. You close your heart because ego tells you that openness will only bring more suffering. But in truth, ego is afraid that love will expose its emptiness. As you continue to follow ego, you begin to shrink. Slowly, quietly, you become a smaller version of yourself, a version that is shaped by fear, a version that cannot breathe deeply, a version that moves through life with constant tension in the body. You feel the pressure in your chest, the heaviness in your stomach, the tightness in your throat. These sensations are not random. They are the physical footprints of ego. It has lived inside you for so long that your body carries its fingerprints, but something inside you begins to resist, not with force, not with anger, but with a soft confusion. You start to feel that something is not aligned. You notice that even when you get what ego told you to chase, you still feel empty. You begin to ask yourself why the victories feel hollow, why the achievements lose their shine so quickly, why the relationships feel distant even when you are close. This quiet discomfort is not failure. It is awakening, the soul whispering that there must be another way. Ego fears this whisper, because if you follow it, you will begin to see the world without the filters ego built around you. You will see that you do not need to win every argument. You do not need to be admired. You do not need to keep proving your worth. You do not need to build your identity on the fragile foundation of other people's opinions. You start to sense that real strength is not in control, but in surrender. Not in pride, but in truth. Not in perfection, but in presence. When the first cracks appear in the walls ego has built, you may feel confused. You may feel lost. But this is the doorway, the moment when the true self begins to wake beneath the ruins of who you thought you had to be. And this awakening is not loud. It is subtle. It arrives like a soft breath inside the chest, like a quiet warmth spreading through the ribs, like the first light of dawn touching your skin. Ego survives by keeping you asleep. It does not want you to notice the patterns that repeat in your life. It does not want you to question the reactions that rise so quickly inside you. It does not want you to see how deeply it controls the way you speak, act, move, and breathe. Ego depends on your confusion. It depends on your automatic responses. It depends on the stories you tell yourself without ever stopping to ask if they are true. But there comes a moment when the surface of your mind begins to crack and the truth below it starts to push upward. You begin to notice how ego reacts before you even have time to think. Someone disagrees with you, and a wave of tension rises in your chest. Someone ignores you, and a sharp sting appears in your stomach. Someone succeeds, and a quiet jealousy spreads through your thoughts. These reactions do not come from your true self. They come from ego defending its territory. Ego wants to be the center of every moment, the star of every story, the judge of every situation. And when something threatens its importance, ego strikes with fear, anger, pride, or silence. You might believe that these reactions reveal who you are, but look closer. They reveal who you have been trained to be. Ego is a teacher that you never chose. It taught you how to protect yourself. It taught you how to build walls. It taught you how to hide your softness. It taught you that your value depends on how you compare to others. And for many years you accepted these lessons because you believed they kept you safe. But safety built on fear is not safety. It is a cage shaped like comfort. As you grow more aware, you begin to feel the weight of this cage. You feel it when you want to speak your truth, but stay silent. You feel it when you want to love, but pull away. You feel it when you want to rest, but force yourself to continue. Ego tells you that rest is weakness, that love is danger, that truth is risk. But beneath these warnings lies a deeper truth. Ego fears anything that might reveal its smallness, anything that might show you that you do not need it, anything that might bring you closer to the quiet power of your real self. There is a moment when you begin to sense this real self rising. It does not shout. It does not demand. It does not bargain. It simply watches. When someone provokes you, the real self notices the tension without feeding it. When you feel envy, the real self observes it like a cloud passing across the sky. When you feel fear, the real self does not run. It stays. It breathes. It listens. This presence is calm not because it is weak, but because it is rooted in a deeper truth that ego cannot touch. Once you feel even a small glimpse of this presence, ego begins to panic. It will try to pull you back with old thoughts, old wounds, old identities. It will whisper that you will fail, that you will be abandoned, that you will be humiliated. Ego uses your past to chain your future, but you start to see the pattern. You start to feel the difference between fear fed by ego and intuition coming from truth. Fear feels heavy and urgent. Intuition feels calm and steady. Fear pushes. Intuition guides. Fear shrinks you. Intuition expands you. The shift begins slowly. A breath, a pause, a moment of clarity. You start to make choices that ego does not approve of. You walk away from situations that feed your pride. You speak with honesty even when it unsettles you. You admit your mistakes without collapsing into shame. You allow yourself to feel without hiding. With each choice, ego weakens. Its voice becomes softer. Its grip becomes looser. And in the quiet space that opens inside you, something begins to bloom. This bloom is not dramatic. It is not an explosion of light. It is a gentle awakening, a soft unfolding of who you were always meant to be. You begin to feel more present in your body, more aware of your breath, more connected to the people around you. You notice beauty in small things. You feel gratitude more naturally. You begin to understand that strength is not control. Strength is openness. Strength is vulnerability lived with courage. Strength is the willingness to meet life without hiding behind the mask of ego. Ego does not surrender easily. When it senses that you are waking up, it changes its shape. It becomes more subtle, more clever, more quiet. It begins to speak in a new voice, a voice that sounds like truth, but is built from fear. Ego starts telling you that you are becoming enlightened, that you are better than others, that you see reality more clearly than they do. It wraps pride in the language of growth. It turns awakening into another mask, another identity, another throne. This is one of the oldest tricks of ego. When it cannot control you through weakness, it controls you through superiority. At this stage, you might feel a strange tension inside. A part of you feels lighter, more open, more aware, but another part feels heavier, almost swollen with a new kind of self-importance. You notice that you compare yourself to others even more, but now you do it with spiritual language. You judge their anger, you judge their fear, you judge their confusion. Ego makes you believe that you are above them. But look closely. This judgment is not coming from your growth. It is coming from the same old fear of being insignificant. You may begin to notice something else. Ego starts shaping your desires again. It whispers that you must appear wise, that you must speak with calm, that you must act like someone who has found peace. It does not matter if you feel lost or broken inside. Ego tells you to perform your progress, to turn your awakening into a show, to hide your confusion, because confusion breaks the image ego wants to protect. This is how ego survives inside spiritual growth. It makes you believe that awakening is something to display instead of something to live. But the true self does not need an audience. The true self does not need recognition. The true self does not need to appear perfect. It only needs space, breath, honesty. When the true self speaks, it does not try to impress. It does not try to control. It simply reveals what is real. It moves with simplicity, with clarity, with softness that ego cannot imitate. And the more you feel this softness, the easier it becomes to recognize the sharp edges of ego. Ego thrives on tension. The true self thrives on presence. Ego breaks the moment into pieces. The true self gathers them into wholeness. Ego pulls your mind into the future or drags it into the past. The true self brings you back to the center of now. Ego is always hungry. The true self is always enough. Ego lives through comparison. The true self lives through connection. Ego needs to be right. The true self needs to be real. As you continue to awaken, you begin to feel a new awareness rising in your body. It is not dramatic. It feels like warmth in your chest, like a quiet pulse behind your ribs, like a small flame that does not flicker even when you feel afraid. This flame is the presence that ego has tried to bury for so many years. It is the part of you that existed before fear, before pride, before judgment. It is the part of you that remembers what freedom feels like. This flame grows each time you choose truth over performance, each time you allow yourself to feel without hiding, each time you speak with honesty, even when your voice shakes, each time you admit that you do not know. Ego hates these moments because they expose its weakness. Ego thrives on certainty. The true self grows in openness. Ego wants to protect the illusion of control. The true self welcomes the mystery of being alive. There will be moments when you feel afraid of this openness, Ego will whisper that you are losing yourself, that you are becoming vulnerable, that you are stepping into danger. But look deeper. The fear you feel is not a warning. It is a sign that the walls you built around your heart are beginning to crumble. You are not losing yourself. You are returning to yourself. The fear is the noise ego makes when it is no longer the ruler of your life. As you listen to these words, pause for a moment. Feel your breath. Feel the space inside your chest. Feel the quiet shift happening beneath your thoughts. If this journey speaks to you, I gently invite you to support this message by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. Your presence helps others discover this path. Ego begins to weaken the moment you stop obeying its commands. But weakening is not the same as disappearing. Ego watches you closely during this stage. It waits for the moment when you feel tired, overwhelmed, or uncertain. It waits for the moment when your heart feels heavy and your mind feels scattered. And then it moves, not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like a shadow returning to a familiar room. When ego returns, it often comes dressed as comfort. It tells you to go back to the old ways of thinking because they feel familiar. It tells you to return to the habits that once numbed your pain because they once gave you temporary peace. Ego reminds you of your old roles, your old wounds, your old reactions. It whispers that you are safer inside the walls you built than in the open field of awareness. Ego knows that fear is one of the strongest chains, and it will use that chain until the last possible moment. You might feel yourself slipping. You might feel frustration rising inside you as the old patterns return. You might wonder why progress feels so fragile. But understand this truth. Every awakening is followed by a test. Every expansion is followed by a pull backward. This is not failure. This is rhythm. Growth does not move in a straight line. It moves in waves. Each wave carries you deeper into awareness. Each return of ego gives you another chance to see it clearly without collapsing into it. As you face this returning wave, you begin to notice something new. You are no longer fooled as easily. The old thoughts feel familiar, but not convincing. The old reactions feel heavy, but not absolute. The old fears still whisper, but their voice is weaker. You start to see the pattern before you fall into it. You feel the tension rising before it takes over your body. You sense the urge to defend yourself before your words sharpen. This awareness is the beginning of mastery, not control, not dominance, but clarity. Ego cannot survive clarity. Clarity removes the disguise. Clarity reveals the machinery behind the emotion. Clarity shows you where the fear begins, how the anger grows, why the pride rises. When you see ego deeply, you no longer mistake its voice for your own. You begin to feel the separation between the fear that rises and the self that witnesses it. And in this separation, you find freedom. Not the dramatic freedom people imagine, but quiet freedom, breathable freedom, a freedom that feels like space in the chest. In this space, something new begins to grow. A deeper strength. Not the strength of force, but the strength of truth. You start to feel that you no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to win every conflict. You no longer need to protect the fragile image ego built. You feel a softness rising in you, a softness that ego once taught you to fear. But this softness is not weakness. It is the strength that comes from being aligned with your true self, rather than trapped in the demands of ego. You begin to understand that the real power is not loud. The real power is calm. The real power is presence. The real power is the ability to meet life without running from it. Ego taught you that you needed shields, but the true self teaches you that you only needed truth. You begin to see how much energy you wasted protecting an identity that was never real. And in this realization, you feel something almost shocking. Relief. A sense of release so gentle that it feels like exhaling after holding your breath for years. You will notice changes in your relationships. You no longer react as quickly. You no longer defend as fiercely. You no longer cling as desperately. Some people may feel confused by this shift. Some may feel threatened. Some may even try to pull you back into your old patterns. But this is not your burden. When you change, the world around you must reorganize. Some connections will deepen. Some will fall away. Some will transform into something more honest. This is the natural consequence of awakening. As you continue to walk this path, remember that ego will still whisper from time to time. It will try to reclaim its throne. But each whisper is an invitation to return to presence. Each moment of tension is an opportunity to breathe. Each rise of fear is a chance to see clearly. Awareness is not a final destination. It is a practice, a way of living, a returning, again and again, gently, patiently, honestly. And if you feel something shifting inside you as you hear these words, I invite you to support this journey in a quiet, simple way. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your presence helps these words reach others who are stepping into their own awakening. Ego does not die in a single moment. It fades the way night fades into morning, slowly, gradually, in layers. There are still places inside you where ego hides, small corners where old stories remain untouched, memories that still carry heat, fears that still whisper from behind your ribs. These final shadows are the most delicate. They do not scream. They do not push. They simply wait. They wait for the moment when you are tired, when you doubt yourself, when you question your path. Ego knows that the last part of awakening is not about power. It is about honesty. You begin to notice these shadows when you sit in silence, when the outside noise fades and only your breath remains. In that silence, you feel something stirring inside you, a soft anxiety, a quiet restlessness. It is ego trying to survive in the places you have not yet explored. Ego tells you that you need more recognition, more success, more validation, more protection, more answers. But for the first time, you see the truth. The hunger ego creates cannot be satisfied because ego does not want fulfillment. Ego wants dependency. As this realization deepens, you begin to understand something essential. Ego was never the enemy. Ego was the wounded part of you trying to keep you safe. It built walls because it learned fear early. It created masks because the world once felt dangerous. It demanded control because it associated vulnerability with pain. Ego did not imprison you with cruelty. It imprisoned you with misunderstanding. It believed the world would break you if you ever stepped out from behind its protection. When you see ego through this lens, compassion rises naturally. A compassion that is soft and steady. You no longer fight ego. You no longer try to destroy it. You simply stop feeding it. You stop believing its stories. You stop following its commands. You stop offering your life as a sacrifice to its fear. And without fuel, ego begins to dissolve. Not violently, not dramatically, but gently. Like a shadow disappearing as the sun rises. And then something remarkable happens. You begin to feel your true self not as a concept, but as a presence that lives in your breath, a presence that settles in your chest, a presence that watches life unfold without fear. This presence does not need approval. It does not need control. It does not need to compare itself to anyone. It simply exists with a quiet confidence that ego could never create. It feels like coming home after being lost for many years. You start to live differently. Not louder, not harder, but deeper. You begin to listen instead of react. You begin to speak from truth instead of defense. You begin to open your heart even when fear whispers in the background. You begin to trust the unfolding of your life instead of trying to force it into shape. This is the shift that ego feared. A shift from survival to living, from tension to presence, from illusion to reality. You also begin to notice a strange new freedom, a freedom from the constant pressure to become someone, to achieve, to impress, to be seen, to be admired. You no longer chase meaning. You create it with every breath. You no longer run from pain. You meet it with understanding. You no longer shrink from love. You allow it to move through you without attaching to it. This is the freedom ego could never give you, because ego was built on fear, and true freedom is built on awareness. In this final stage, you discover the deepest truth of all. The voice you thought was ego was never your identity. It was only a fragment, a temporary guard, a frightened protector. And the you that stands here now is not the you shaped by fear. It is the you shaped by presence, by clarity, by softness, by strength that does not need to be proven. The true you does not demand worship. It does not demand sacrifice. It does not demand control. It simply lives. And as this journey reaches its final breath, I invite you gently, softly, quietly to support this space. You can like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Your presence helps these words find others who are ready to unmask ego and return to themselves.